Okay, today is a day I've looked forward to. I've dreaded because I know that it's going to be a tough day to get Papa Jack through some of the things. You boys, David, Wally, you took your dad on a trip that you really, really were excited about. To where?
Washington, D.C.
What did he want to go see?
Well, we wanted him to see all the monuments, but especially the Korean War monument.
Right.
I had taken my grandson 2 times in the last, Marty and I had taken our grandson 2 times the last 3 years and spent 2 weeks both times. And Wally and I talked about it. We knew we could not get Dad there for 2 weeks.
Yeah. Dad's like me, about 3-day trip. That's about it.
Well, Mom always says, you want your dad to go anywhere, don't tell him till you're getting in a car. But
Good plan.
we were afraid to do that. So Wally and I, about 3 weeks, I guess, we planned it and pulled it off.
It's a neat place.
Yeah. Bill's been there. He brought back some photos. Now, you happen to have about 400 photos. We're going to share some today.
Yeah, we do.
We may not share all of them, but we're going to share some. Now, I've never been to Washington, D.C. Can you give us an idea for a person who's never been there how amazing it is to pull up and see? I can't imagine it. You told me that it is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it is.
Your first trip there, what did you think?
Well, I went when I was a child. Matter of fact, Mom.
So it didn't amount to much when you were a child.
And I think back of that trip, and it really didn't. I was 12 years old, and of course Wally was 3 weeks old. Mother said, we're going to Washington, D.C., whether Wally's a baby or not. So you were, what, 2.5 or 3 weeks old. So his first trip, he doesn't remember a whole lot. But, as a child, it was just a big place. But to go back this many years later, knowing the number of people that had lost their lives, especially through the memorials.
Right.
And not just the memorials, it was also it's there to honor those who came back alive, not just those who lost their life there.
Right.
And yeah, it brings tears to your eyes to watch the veterans as they go around and do their things. But Wally and I talked about it, and we wanted Dad to be, when Dad was there last, there were a few memorials, but nothing like that. So we wanted Dad to see it. And it was a man thing. We left the niece and Mom at home.
Okay, I want to ask you something. Wally, do you remember, were you alive during the Vietnam War?
Yes, I was born in 1965.
Okay, so about toward the end of it. Okay. I remember the day the POWs came home. Do you remember things like that?
Yes, I remember watching it on the news, but I didn't learn the significance of it till later.
Right.
But I can remember seeing the planes land and various things from the news coverage.
Right. Well, I think television opened children's eyes. My generation didn't have all the coverage that we had, so I didn't know a whole lot about that. But I can remember the 60s, and I can remember Vietnam ending, and I can remember the POWs coming home in the 70s. I can remember those things. Your dad has an amazing memory. He remembers 60 years ago. How old were you, Papa Jack, when you went to Korea?
I was 20 years old.
At 20 years old, you left the village over in Cartersville, Georgia, where you grew up, tiny
I was
town?
19 when I joined the Army.
Okay.
Sworn in November the 1st, 1950.
Talk about going from that tiny town to what is the city you went to go to Korea? Where did you fly out of?
Didn't fly. Caught a boat.
A boat?
Yes.
Where'd you catch a boat in Georgia?
Didn't know to go to basic training. I caught a train and went to basic training.
Okay.
From where I finished my basic training after a 7-day leave, went to California on a troop train and got on the boat, and rest is history.
Now, the time from going from here to California on a train took how long?
Gosh, I don't know how many days it was.
You know, it'd be 3 hours today. If you were a military man today, leaving Fort Rucker and going to Pendleton, is Pendleton in California?
Camp Pendleton is a Marine base in California.
3 hours. 3 hours. It didn't take you 3 hours on a train, did it?
No, it took about, I don't know, it didn't take as long as it did to go from Pier 91 in California to Yokohama, Japan. It took 17 days. It took about half that going west.
17 days on a boat?
On a boat.
First time away from home?
Yes. Went to Florida in 1947 for the first time out of the state of Georgia, I guess. I'd been to Alabama before, had a brother live there.
Alabama doesn't count. We
Oh, it counts. It counts with me. Some good days in Alabama.
Well, you were stationed at Fort Rucker during a
When
period of time.
When I came back from Korea, I was stationed at Camp Rucker, it was then, and finished my time training troops.
You
there.
went over as a private?
Yeah.
Is that right? And came back what?
Sergeant first class, the old tech sergeant.
Does that mean you were a good guy when you were there?
Means I was a fine guy. It really does.
Yeah, yeah. You earned how many stripes?
5.
Wow.
5.
Wow.
5. Now, I've seen that memorial in Washington that they're talking about, the Korean War Memorial.
Yeah.
What did you think about that memorial?
Well, it brought back a lot of thoughts and memories, and it looked so real. It's like going back in time.
It's kind of an eerie
You know,
sight to me
yeah.
because of the guys in the raincoats and the,
Oh, yeah. Those ponchos and all the weapons. I literally inspected every weapon every man had, in that group as we looked at it. Now, we saw it in the daylight, and the awesome thing we saw, and of course we walked, I don't know how many miles in 3 days. We walked everywhere in the rain and whatever. But at night, it was awesome. It was awesome. You could see so much more of it, and the wall
yeah.
that we saw there. As Vietnam Memorial had the wall, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
59,600 odd names on there.
Yeah.
The World War II memorial was just an awesome sight.
Oh, yeah.
What did you think about
Yeah.
that one?
Oh, I thought it was, I remember World War II like it's yesterday. And
I can't remember what I had for lunch, and that did amaze me this weekend talking to you. You remembered so many things
Yeah.
from 60 years ago.
Yeah.
And you made a statement a couple of times this weekend. You said, well, it's been a long time, but you have an amazing memory of that. Good memories and bad memories both?
both, yeah.
Friendships that lasted a lifetime?
Yes. Some. Especially now, more of the friendships that I've been involved in were made after I came back from Korea during the war and stationed at Camp Rucker, Alabama. We still visit family in Florida that we've known since 1952.
Wow.
And it's an amazing journey, really. I thought a lot of times about making a military career. I had good opportunity and for advancement and whatever, but it wasn't conducive to family life. And by the way, speaking of Alabama, David's an Alabama native. He was born Camp Rucker, Alabama.
He was.
Yeah, he
I hadn't
was.
told everybody in Fannin County that.
And
When
I
they tell all
tell
their
them
Alabama
that,
jokes,
they
they
just
take it.
laugh, Well, says we thought something was wrong with
Well,
him.
we're glad you came home and did not make a military career because you made one of the most amazing families in this community. You happen to have a variety of children from a female pastor as your daughter Denise. That's very unusual. You happen to have a young man here who steps up to the plate. And can you cook hash browns? Wally, can you cook a
can
lot of
he
hash
ever.
browns?
I can, but if it gets down to me cooking, we're in big trouble.
You own 3 huddle houses, Chatsworth, Georgia, Cedar Bluff, Alabama, and Rainsville, Alabama?
Center Alabama.
Center
yes.
Alabama, that's right, yeah. Now, how long and why did you end up in Alabama? We know David was born there and had the sense to get out. Why did you go there and stay?
It's
His
fault
wife,
too, yeah.
but his wife is watching this. So
Ah.
if you don't care,
I graduated from Georgia Southern in 1987, and David and his college roommate were involved in some pizza places, pickup and delivery, and so David and I decided to open some of those restaurants, and after probably 6 months of looking for locations, we ended up finding a very good location in Rainsville, Alabama, and so I moved over there and met a girl.
The rest is history.
Yeah.
Now, you've got the location in Rainsville is right across from the high school?
Yes,
Yeah.
Plainview High
Great
School.
location.
Right, we were looking for something closer to the red light, and I was fortunate enough to work for an old football coach one time that said he'd rather be lucky than good, and we looked for months for a place closer to the red light, and then this lot came up across from the high school out of the blue, and it turned out to be the perfect place for a huddle house. It's across from the Coliseum and baseball and football fields, and the industrial park's behind me. So I was very fortunate to stumble into that, because it was certainly not by our actions or on purpose that we were there, but it worked out, and they built a new road beside us, and so.
Didn't hurt your feelings any, did it?
No, it was great. It was great.
My question is, does mom and dad get to eat for free when they come?
They do if I'm there. If I'm not there, they won't leave without paying.
They're a little on the stubborn side. I
they're
will
real
tell you that
hard.
about both of
They're
them.
real hard to swing
This
towards
old-fashioned
that. But if I'm
Yeah.
there, I can sneak them out. But if I'm not there, they won't divulge their identification, and they pay. So
Now, you do have a very, very close family, and even though you're in Alabama, it's quite often your mom will say, we're going over to see Wally, we're going over to see the kids. Even though you're in Alabama, y'all are still very close, aren't you?
we are, and there's probably not usually 2 or 3 weeks goes by that David or some of the family, Denise or mom and dad's there, or we're here, or
How long does it take to get from here to Rainsville?
before the rock slide, or that.
Yeah.
If you can go through the Ocoee, it takes about 2 hours and 15 minutes to get from my house to mom and dad's. But now it takes about 3 hours if I come. the
What
other
if
way.
you go through Resaca that way? Is there a better way? How do you go now since the rock slide?
Chattanooga to Dalton to
Okay.
bypass Chatsworth on the bottom side and come across the mountain into LJ.
Okay. Well, we want folks to go and see you because you do have an amazing family, and I saw that Saturday night. I was warned when we had dinner with y'all, there were 17, 18 of us. It was a very quiet, very cordial, very, everybody was having conversations with everybody. And Joyce had said, this will scare you to death when all these Brysons get together. It was wonderful. It was wonderful to see the little kids. Now, is it Tucker, your son?
Yes.
Who loved the little baby, and he sat there and played with the baby. Everybody just gets along great. Is it always that way, and has it always been that way?
Of course.
Absolutely.
Actually, it has been pretty good.
Yeah.
We've all learned how to talk and listen at the same time, so nobody gets offended when they're asked
And
to
I
quit talking.
understand that different views, but not big arguments. Mom has one view, y'all have a different view, and we all, and just discussions, but not big arguments.
You ain't
so-
talking political stuff, are you?
Just a little.
Well, Wally and I think, do better with Mom than Denise. Something about two women discussing things they disagree on. But they know when to quit talking, I guess.
Wow.
Or when to
Okay,
leave.
let's talk about your mom was my first guest that somebody said, well, somebody can hold a candle to Sherry Martin. Your mom has done everything. She has been involved in so much and continues to be today. And she's 70, Papa Jack, she's 76?
39.
Yeah, 39.
I can't say that she's 76.
She
She'll
is,
have to
she
tell
is
you that.
76. I'll tell
Yeah.
you that.
And still busy, busy, busy. Is that what makes them look so young? They're so active in so much?
I guess they've always been active in whatever Mom wanted them to be active in.
Oh, Papa Jack.
When Dad outgrew softball, then Mom kind of took over. He played a lot of softball when we were younger. But one of the neat things that we do at the house is make it a point with cell phones and telephones to stay in contact with each other. Well, we talk to each other, a lot, and text a lot. But without that, it would be much more difficult because when Wally first moved over there, our phone bills were pretty high.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot of options. It was before the split up, but now it's a whole lot easier to be able to do that.
Now, talk about opposites attracting. I think that you were from a family different than Joyce's family.
Entirely.
Entirely. And
Yes.
she told me that. And she said, her dad was a pastor, went to church every time the doors opened,
Yeah.
and many, many churches. Tell me a
Yeah.
little bit about your family.
We had a family.
Did you
That's
have
a
a
little-
large
that's a
family?
little bit.
Okay. Did
Yeah,
you have
there
a
was
large-
8 of us.
Okay.
I'll tell you the things that I remember. My kid brother Bill, I think he's 73 or 4
And
now.
I've met Bill. Yeah. Plays the
When he
piano.
was born in 1936, my mom had a stroke during labor and childbirth, and she
Wow.
was paralyzed, invalid all the way through World War II. And there was 8 of us all together, and we moved. We didn't have a lot of anything. We were mill workers. You know, my dad worked all the time. We lived in a...
Was it the ADCO building?
No, this was at Tryon, Georgia.
Okay.
And we lived between the wagon bridge and the railroad bridge right on the Chattooga River. You know, 6 miles, I think 5 or 6 miles above Summerville, Georgia.
Right.
Now, all of us kids were born there except one. My older brother was born on a farm. My dad was sharecropping farmer until he was 20 years old, went into the textile mill to work. And we left there and moved to Calhoun after World War II had started, and lived there during World War II. I was a freshman in Calhoun High School in 1945 or 6, I forget exactly. And then we moved from there to ATCO, and I was 15, I think. And from there on, it's
And I've
history.
seen photos of a 15-year-old Jack Bryson. You were so cute. No wonder Joyce got her head turned.
Well,
Goodness.
the way Joyce got in the family, or the way I got into Joyce's family, her dad was a pastor, and he was called from here to pastor the Atco Baptist Church in Cartersville, Georgia. That's a Goodyear Mill, the village. It had everything involved in it. They had the homes, they had their own police force. Bill knows, I knew Bill's mom when she was just a little bitty girl, and that whole family. And so when Joyce and family moved to Cartersville in 1948, the rest is history. You know, we had a date, and we had another date, and so on. And I joined the Army before we got married. We were engaged, and I came home on leave, and we were together. We got married, and we were together 7 days before I went overseas, and then stayed there until we moved up here.
Now, what's it like today to be, you're the head honcho. Joyce appears to be, but you are the head of a large family that is so involved, and today you still work in the school system.
I sub at Fannin County Middle School. You know, I worked there for 12 years, and I really enjoyed that time.
And the kids love you.
I really am not acquainted with the kids now like I was when I saw them come and go right on through, my grandchildren and all. But I consider that the best employment that I ever had, right there. It taught me more about how the system works. I never had any inkling of an idea what was involved in running a school system and what have you, even though David was teaching.
Right.
Marty was teaching, and it's just awesome to think about what goes into keeping an organization like a school system going. And I learned a lot. I enjoyed a lot of it, and I still enjoy going back. They treat me like I'm family.
They do, and they love you. David retired from the Georgia school system.
Yes.
Walked across the street and went to work in Polk County, Tennessee.
Well, I turn right out of my driveway instead of left now, so it's nice.
Why didn't you give up teaching? What was in you? Was it something maybe he taught you, maybe your mom taught you? Why did you want to go back into teaching?
Well, one thing Dad didn't say about his family is they work. I mean,
Amazing work ethics.
Well, they don't ever retire. His brothers worked, you know, and his one for the state highway, one in the banking business, one, you know, they just all, his sisters, they all worked. It was not one of those things that was, it's expected, you know, it's expected. And I guess I'm not ready to retire. Plus, my wife has 4 more years, and she
Why would you want to be sitting at home alone?
She said I wouldn't be.
Yeah.
So she said, I need to continue what I love doing. I love to teach, and I started out teaching 5th and 6th grade, and that's what I'm doing now, and it is a lot of fun. I still enjoy it, and very much. The day I don't enjoy it, I'll go home. I'll go home.
Yeah. Do you think you've made a difference in some children's lives?
Oh, I think so. If you're in teaching because you love kids, which is why you should be there,
Right.
You will make a difference in a lot of people's lives. I look back, and there's particular teachers at Cartersville that I can tell you made a tremendous difference in my life. I was in the city school system there, but it wouldn't have mattered if I'd been in the county.
Are y'all, I know David's older than you, are you close to Wally's age?
Well, I'm 47.
How old are you?
44.
Did you know Coach Matthew Hill?
No.
I did.
Dad knew several of
Summers
those.
Hill High
Yeah,
School.
he passed away last year.
I didn't know that. Yeah,
So
I knew
you
that.
were talking about integration earlier. That's one of the highlights of my life is we integrated without any issues at all. All these other communities were having all of these problems integrating, and Ray Hill was our superintendent at the time, and we integrated without any problem. The old high school, the Summer Hill High School was now the middle school, 7th, 8th, and 9th, and 10, 11, and 12 was Cartersville City Schools, and we had one little parade kind of deal, or march, or whatever you want to call it. Very peaceful, very, very polite, and there was no problem at all. And,
Yes, Summer Hill and Cartersville was the black community, and then of course you cross the railroad tracks over here, and you had the white folks living over there. And then we started going to school. I went to Summer Hill for a couple of years.
yeah, and I'm sure you remember, talking about memories, the four-way diner.
Oh, it's still there.
Yeah, in Cartersville.
Still there.
But I remember as a child where the blacks got their orders in the back.
Oh.
They ate in the back, and then I also remember as a high school student where they got to go in the front door.
Right.
So you had asked earlier, you asked Bill, did he live that time? Well, we lived it. Some of my best friends were black, and
Right.
being white, I considered myself to be one of their best friends.
Right.
It was good.
Well, when we left Atlanta, Mother came to Jasper and opened a restaurant in what was the Archer Court motorhome, and they had a little restaurant building there, and the blacks continued to come to the back door, and Mother would meet them at the back door and say, if you want something to eat, march yourself around front, walk in my front door. And she met some resistance because she was serving at Martin Luther King's home the night he was assassinated, because she worked for the company that sent food out there and sent volunteers, and we were all involved in that. We didn't know that wasn't the way America was supposed to work. And so when she came to Jasper, she met some resistance because she would greet people at the back door and say, no, I'm not fixing your plate out this back door. Walk yourself around front. And they're like, no, Miss Hazel, I can't do that. And she said, oh, yeah, if you're going to eat my stuff today, you're going to do that. And she'd make them go around front. It was a little bit tough.
I never will forget the story that Henry Aaron talked about when they played baseball, and he was in the late 50s, early 60s, and they played a game up in Washington, D.C., and him and a couple of the other guys on the team went into a restaurant to eat, and they didn't want to serve them. And here's a famous pro baseball player, didn't want to serve them. And when they got done eating, he saw them take the dishes to the back and heard them slamming the dishes on the floor and breaking them.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, get over it.
But he grew up in an era, he could tell us more about that, I'm sure, but how were the black soldiers treated during the Korean War?
I was going to ask you that because I saw a photo of you and you had a black soldier in a photo with you. Was there separation in the time of service?
Not well. In training, I was in training with all white. There was a black outfit, 24th Night Fighters, they called it. Now that's not to be confused with the 24th Infantry Division that I served in Korea, but they split them up and put them in different units, and I met a couple of them that came into our unit, and that man you saw was probably one of them. And then at Fort Rooker, Alabama, Camp Rooker, when I came back down there, the combat engineer battalion that I was in didn't have any blacks in it when I first went there. It was a National Guard outfit that was being phased out as far as training, active duty, and we set up to give advanced combat engineer training. Then they sent in one black company commander there, sharp man, knew what he was about, and then several soldiers. We had 15 came into my platoon at one time.
It was a different
But we
time in
didn't have any
America.
problems.
No.
We
Well,
didn't have any problems. They were good soldiers. They were sharp, and they excelled in a lot of areas that white soldiers were lax in, and vice versa.
Papa Jack, were you drafted or did you?
No, I joined.
Okay.
I joined.
Was it during the time there was an active draft?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes. One of my friends that died last week or 2 weeks ago in Cartersville, Georgia, was drafted after I came home, and was the war was ended in 1953, and I went in 1950, 6 months after the war had started, and went directly overseas from training, and then came back and trained troops the rest of my enlistment, and the war was over during the Eisenhower administration in 1953.
Let me ask you something. In the pictures I saw this weekend, were there trees where you were serving? Because it looked it reminded me a little bit of Copper Hill. Wasn't a lot of greenery anywhere.
No,
Is that pretty much what the atmosphere was?
Most of the timbers were either blown up. Well, now in the south it was rice paddies, and then when you got further north toward the 38th parallel, and they cut all of those timbers and made bunkers out of them, trench lines and what have you. Wasn't a lot, but I went through soil twice or three times, and it wasn't, you couldn't even tell what it was. You know, it's blown all to heck. And it's a metropolis now. It's an amazing place, they say. But,
have you ever wanted to go back?
No.
No.
No, I really haven't. I was on the Eastern Central Front to start with, and then we did battalion reserve duty, and I was transferred out of an infantry thing into a pioneer and ammunition platoon support team, handling all the ammunition and supplies for the frontline crew. And that don't mean we weren't on the front lines and in harm's way. We were quite often, but that was most of my stay there was in that, and that's how I picked up an MOS number that was combat engineer. And when I came home and was stationed in a combat engineer unit at Camp Rooker, I requested a transfer to the infantry because I didn't know that, but I'd handle a lot of explosives, dynamite and C3 stuff that they used, you know, primarily to destroy booby traps and unexploded incoming artillery rounds. We just did a lot of things. And they said, no, we're going to send you on temporary duty to Fort Belvoir, Virginia for 3 months, and you're going to combat engineer school, said, because we need your expertise that you'll have when you come back to help write lesson plans and train troops. And that's what I did. So at the time I was there, Joyce went to Cleveland, Ohio, where my folks lived at that time, and stayed most of that 3 months. And I've been to Washington and never saw it, really. Actually going through it and what have you, but a friend of mine that was in school there with me lived in Akron, and we would on the weekends hit the Pennsylvania Turnpike. We would hitchhike until we got to that turnpike, and then we'd hitchhike to Akron. And his dad ran a cabaret, you know, a nightclub type thing, and I remember a beautiful, brand new, nice automobile that he'd take me on to Cleveland in, and he'd come back, you know.
Wow.
That's one of the good things I remember. But I enjoyed my time in the military very much.
Let's talk about the difference in the weapons you dealt with and the weapons of today.
I have no idea what they have today.
Can you even imagine the difference? Yeah.
No.
What about helicopters? Did you have helicopters then?
Well, the only helicopters that I saw were the ones that came in to fly the wounded back.
Okay.
And they had that little coffin rack on it, you know, our stretcher rack, a litter they called it, and that's the only helicopters I saw. They used them a time or two. I've read since then, you know, advertisements for one or two of the first helicopter fences, you know, but I never did see them. We walked everywhere we went.
Well, right now we're going to show some photos that David brought. This is a PowerPoint with photos of what?
Well, it's kind of funny. Dad never had ridden on I don't think he minds me telling you, a subway. And
I've never ridden on a subway.
Oh, listen.
Still today, never ridden on a subway. I have no desire to ride
He's found
on a
out he
subway.
don't want to ride one looking backwards because he makes him sick. He's got to
Wow.
look where he's going.
Okay.
But anyway, there are the memorials. There are just, you know, things that we did there. There's a shot in there that I actually took earlier in the summer. We were there when they had the shooting at the Jewish Memorial, the Holocaust Museum. We were there the day before.
Wow.
And we were there the day after, and they're They're, of course, they're flying the flags at half-mast and that stuff, which, you mentioned earlier, there is still, there's still a lot of hatred in this country toward other nationalities and other races. And the man who did that shooting died last week, and he was 80-something years old. Just walked up and shot and killed a black man. He didn't have a clue who it was.
Well,
Yes.
this weekend, the internet has made our life better. It's made our life not better at some points. This weekend, I had an idea that I wanted to type in. My grandfather was Jewish, German Jewish, and I typed in his name, and I got copies of 1952 grandparents' divorce decree and all the things that were used in it, because it is now on law books and has been used quite often. Then I typed in my father's name, and Papa Jack heard a little bit about my dad in this seminar we did, and it had him in the newspaper in St. Petersburg, Florida. This is from the 40s, the late 40s. So the internet today has made it possible for great memories to be kept. It blew my mind. I was sitting there reading all this transcript, and I thought, wow. The internet has also made it possible for soldiers to get in touch and to keep in touch. Now, that's something your mom loves to do, the internet.
Yes.
Has she contacted any of Dad's old Korean buddies?
No, but now my daughter's mother-in-law spent quite a bit of hours on the internet and wound up on Facebook and located one of her husband's. He was in Vietnam. David Bigham was in Vietnam, and so Darlene spent, I don't know how long, and it took a long time, but located the daughter on Facebook of someone he actually was with in Vietnam.
Wow.
And arranged a reunion just over Christmas, and totally surprised both of them involved. So now Mom has not done that, but people in the family or extended family have done this. One of these pictures shows what I think is interesting, shows the statues that you're talking about at the Korean War Monument. And using the internet and the sources we have, we found that there are 19 statues there. And the reason there's 19 statues is when the sun hits it, it shows a reflection of those 19 statues on the Korean wall behind it, which represents the 38th parallel, which divides North Korea and South Korea. So the thought that goes behind these memorials must be unbelievable.
Those first several shots were of the World War II Memorial, which is a gorgeous place. Granite.
And it's divided into the Pacific and the Atlantic, conflicts, and it shows
Did
them
you
all.
know some of those names, Papa
Donald
Jack?
W. Queen
Donald
from
Queen.
Epworth, Georgia,
Oh, wow.
died in Vietnam.
Wow.
About in the middle of the war. He lived right down the road from us, and our grandfather was part of his funeral one night.
Wow.
That tribute to the nurses in Vietnam was probably the most moving picture that I think. You see one nurse praying, and one nurse is looking for the helicopter to come in and get them, and the other nurse has her fist in a wound.
Wow. Wow.
All that's right there in the line, too.
Right.
The Washington Monument and the Mall and the Lincoln Memorial and the World War II Memorial, along with the U.S. Capitol.
Well, I've always heard that D.C.'s traffic is horrendous. How did you cope with that? Did you know your way around enough that you made it easier for everybody?
Well, we didn't drive anywhere. We
Okay.
took the monorail. We went there to only see what we went to see, and because we wanted Dad to see it. And when I went earlier with my grandson, we did drive 3 years ago over to Baltimore, and now for $1.75 you can ride round trip a light rail from Washington D.C. to Baltimore, and you can get around pretty much anywhere you want to go. You got to figure that system out, or you'll be going backwards and frontwards and spend a lot of time
Oh,
on it.
wow.
And there's no need to drive.
Yeah, okay.
You can get around.
They got trolley there, too, you can take. We did that a time or two.
Beautiful.
That gentleman in the wheelchair was part of the Freedom Flight. There were veterans all over that gentleman there. There were veterans all over Washington that were part of the Freedom Flight, where they bring folks to see the monuments, and it was very good.
There's the Korean War Memorial.
Now, did you go to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier?
Yes, we did.
Okay, tell me a little bit about that. What was that like?
Matter of fact, there are 2 tombs of the. We were not aware of this, and we went to at the top of there is a Tomb of the Unknown Soldiers for some Civil War deaths that came from. And the picture of that's in here too, but it's up next to the home. Well, matter of fact, whose home is that, Dad?
Robert E. Lee.
Robert E. Lee.
Robert E. Lee. That was
And-
their plantation, and they lost it. when he came south with the Civil War.
But in that front yard of that is a tomb of the unknown soldiers where they gathered bodies and stuff up in the Civil
What
War
are
that
those
were not
made of?
claimed. I think they're concrete.
Okay.
They may not be, but they look like
They're
concrete.
poured.
I
They're molded.
I don't remember.
That right there was a moving thing. This was put there. We think that a lot of times things are forgotten when we go fight a war somewhere. And the class, it shows in a minute, I believe it was 1964 from Seoul University.
Wow.
They made a
getting
trip
costumes.
they made a trip over here, and they left that at the monument thanking the veteran.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's not the forgotten war
Yeah, yeah,
to the ones that live free
that's right.
today.
You got to go, Sherry. That's just a
I
trip
really
you got to
want
make.
to go
I'm
to
telling you.
Washington, D.C. Mother went in the 60s. And then again in the 70s, I never got to go. And she went during the cherry blossom time, and it was just so beautiful. And she brought home pictures that just didn't even look real. But I would love to go there.
But that's not a one-day trip. You got to spend a few days there.
No, and you need to do some research because you have to have a ticket to get in some things. They don't charge you, but you have to get there early in the morning to have a ticket to get in some things.
That's beautiful.
You could spend almost an entire day, or at least a good half day, in Arlington Memorial Cemetery.
That's true.
Yeah, we
did that.
spent quite a bit of time there. We took the trolley because we weren't trying to kill Dad. We was trying to let him see things he hadn't
Right.
seen.
We walked umpteen miles, I wore out a walking cane.
But we watched the changing of the guard twice at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldiers,
That's amazing.
and that'll just
Yes, it is.
that'll bring tears to your eyes.
Yeah.
Especially when you hear taps in the background, some other
Right.
guys are being buried across the way.
Yeah.
They had maybe 6 or 8 funerals that day, and every direction you turned, they were burying. Some were recent.
That's an
veterans.
Alabama state bird. Did you say
Yeah,
that?
well, we never did figure out what that was.
We were trying to figure it out, and we thought if we brought it back, somebody would know what it was. But, one of the things that we found to be real interesting is we went down to where the guards, the history of some of the guards, and several of those guards have been killed, past guards were killed, like in Vietnam and, other battles. So
Right.
they just don't guard the tomb and then go away.
Right.
They go fight their battles.
Did you
like
learn a little
everybody
bit
else.
about the history of what it's like to be a guard and what lifestyle they have to live in order to do that?
It is an amazing, and everybody ought to read that.
Yes.
And if they earn
Yes.
the pen, they cannot use profanity.
Right.
They cannot partake of an alcoholic beverage.
Right.
They've got a code of conduct to live by the rest of their life, or
Yeah.
they can lose that pen.
Yeah.
And you got your waist size can't be any. Yeah, that's the wall that's the Korean wall there.
That's
What it
amazing.
shows at the Korean wall is every branch of service is etched in that. And when Dad and I were talking to the Forest Service guy there, he said, our National Parks guy, he said the amazing thing is they did this, and then they poured water on it, they etched it, and they couldn't see it. So they etched it again. They poured water on it again, still couldn't see it clear, so they went all over that etching 3 times because they said, rain or shine, they wanted anybody who visited this wall to be able to see it. So he said it was quite an undertaking.
And
Is
I'm
there a
glad they did,
number?
because the first day we were there, it was raining pretty good.
Is there a number? Has there ever been a documentation of how many people have stood in front of the Vietnam Wall? Because I think when it first was finalized, that was the big thing. Oh, look at that.
No.
I wonder if there's a number of
They'll
people.
give you an estimation of the number of people that have visited, and they said a lot of them are return visits. And there's volunteers there that will help you do etchings, like when you put
Right.
just a piece of
I
paper
have
over
one
there.
of those,
Yeah,
yeah.
of those things that are there. But we found out that when they built the Vietnam War, there was a conflict there because there was nothing there to honor the living. So that's when they went back and they put in 2 of those statues, the one of the 3 men standing that look like they're in battle, and the one of the nurses.
Who is that?
Roosevelt.
Roosevelt, okay.
It's amazing.
That was to honor the living.
It's amazing to me how large that Abraham Lincoln, him sitting in that chair is.
Oh, yeah.
That is amazingly large.
You told me one time that it was, how many feet? 14 feet? Something
Oh, it's more than that. I
ridiculous,
don't know
yeah.
how many feet, but it's just...
Made out of
I
marble?
looked up at it.
It
yeah.
is huge.
Now, he may be 14 feet, but when you add that seat to it, that thing is a monster.
Yeah,
Wow.
And it's intended for you to be able to see from anywhere
And it's
you are.
carved out of marble, isn't it?
yes.
It's not Georgia marble, though.
No, where is it from?
Colorado, I believe.
Yeah, it is Colorado.
Is it? Well, many of the monuments you're seeing are actually Georgia marble and came from our area. So that to me is so incredible. And when you look at the pillars in front of some of these buildings, now if you had to choose, what was your favorite thing about D.C.? What would you do again? Wally, what was your favorite thing? What would you do again? And Papa Jack, what was your favorite thing?
Well, my favorite thing was all the war memorials, and especially what I consider mine, you know. But I never would have got to take this trip had it not been for these two young men here planning it. And, of course, I wouldn't have got to took it anyway if I'd have known this planning it. Most likely, I'm hard to get away from home, but it was an amazing journey, and I'll never forget it and the things we saw. One thing we saw that impressed me tremendously was the Ford Theater where Lincoln was shot, and walk right into the booth where he was seated.
Oh, wow.
Stand right in that door and look down at that stage. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. But it's not gigantic. You know, you read about it and see pictures, and you'd think it's a huge place.
In the basement area, too. Where
Yes. But we saw so many places, and the reason being, they got together, they lined that up before I ever even knew what was going to be. And each day they'd tell me what our itinerary was that day, and we'd go. And
You had no choice.
It was amazing. I was in awe of everything we saw. What was that restaurant y'all took me to?
The Hard Rock.
Hard Rock. I went to the Hard Rock. I went to the Hard Rock Cafe.
Wow.
You know.
We were going to take him to Hooters, and we decided his age that wasn't a good idea.
No, I didn't.
So we
have-
took
I
him
would
to the
have
Hard
hated to
Rock.
survive coming home from Korea and die at Hooters in D.C.
Yeah, that wouldn't
No,
work.
That would be a
I
bad
didn't have
thing.
my digitalis bottle with me.
that would not work. Wally,
But-
what impressed you the most about D.C.?
The whole design, the way the town was designed and how the monuments cross, and you look across at each thing has always been fascinating to me. Not just one thing, but the whole city is such a quality, I guess, just a picture of what America is founded upon, and the way it was designed, from the streets and the monuments, and their statues that are eyes are the same at the Capitol building. They're the same height as Abraham Lincoln's eyes
Wow.
from all the way across. Just an amazing architectural city. I guess the most moving thing to me is still the Vietnam Memorial. There's just something when you get by that wall, and I don't know what it is because I didn't participate, but there's just something about it that is amazing.
David, what impressed you the most?
Well, I guess my memories more about it was like when we were looking at those statues, my first two trips with my grandson, you know, they were just kind of statues, and then Dad told us what each one was doing, and when you look at it, you say, well, that's the kind of boots I wore. And they were left over, not that they were not used, but they were new, but they were left over from World War II. And he was talking about how a lot of the things they fought with there were things that they fought with in World War II. So, you know, the history of that and the fact that it's a part of Dad's life is, you know, made that probably the most moving thing. But I don't know, it's just an amazing, one of the things that amazes me more about D.C. is you actually realize how many different types of people live in this country, because you got them there protesting this, you got them there honoring this, you got them there, you know, and just to sit back and look at that pool and imagine when they had the Martin Luther King speech, I Have a Dream speech that he gave there, and picture that place being as cram-packed full as it was, and the things that went on there, and then that day it was just as peaceful as it could be. And then what was the city they had there? Was it Resurrection City or whatever they built? They had there one time. Of course, it fizzled out. But to look at the actual sit there and, you know, it be so peaceful and quiet and calm, and to know that all the history that's happened there has happened there. And of course, we were also amazed when they talk about the Washington Monument was only built up so high, and the fact that it was actually used during the Confederacy, during the Civil War, as headquarters for some of the soldiers. And, you know, you don't look at the Washington Monument and think, well, you know, that was part of the Civil War per se.
What about Arlington? How did you react to, how many graves are at Arlington?
Oh, so just 30-something thousand probably
Right.
or more.
And when you think about 30,000, to me that seems massive, but then 59,000 men and women lost their lives in Vietnam. Arlington seems so massive, but it's only half of the amount of people who lost their lives in Vietnam. So it seems massive, but it could be twice that big.
We would be amiss if we don't mention the Holocaust Museum.
Absolutely, absolutely.
We went in to observe that, and we left, I suppose it's about 4 hours later, wasn't it? That we stayed in there about 4 hours or 4.5 hours. And it didn't seem like we were in there that long. And I have never seen anything like that in all my life.
It's very modern, too.
Out of
the
everybody
building.
I've ever interviewed on this program, the one person who always comes back to my mind is as I was talking to Yop and I looked over and I saw the number on his arm.
Yeah.
And I just kept looking at that number and I realized that he was part of a history that many people don't remember and don't honor and don't think about. I was married to a man who was an American Nazi, and you can't look as Jewish as I do and have a great relationship in that. It was pretty bad, and I'm glad you brought that up, because when I met Lily Isaacs and I thought about her mom's history and I thought about the things, you know, that's a part of American history. It is part of America's history, and it is a visit everybody needs to make.
And they haven't
Everybody
even
needs to make.
mentioned the Smithsonian Institute's building. There's just
Did
a
you get
bunch
to
of
see that? I mean, how could you possibly, how long were y'all there?
Well, we wasn't there long enough, and I told Dad, I said, we'll take you to the Smithsonian, but you're only going to what we think you'll be interested in, because we were limited. And
Right.
so we took him to the American, and took him only to the part that American Heritage, took him only to the part where they had the war things, because that's what we had primarily took him
Right.
for. And we got run out of there, didn't we, Dad?
Yeah, we did.
We didn't get all that covered, so we're gonna have to go back, I guess.
You gotta have
I
time.
want to clarify that it closed.
Yeah.
We did not get run out
did
of the
not
We
museum.
didn't, well,
Right.
well, we didn't get kicked out. We got run.
No.
Now, did you take him to the National Archives?
No, we just didn't have, he doesn't know it, but he's going back.
You got to, and I'll tell you what, inside that building, Papa Jack, is the Declaration of Independence, the U.S. Constitution, the Louisiana Purchase, all those documents are
Bill
right
of
there for you to
Rights.
look at.
One
The Bill
thing
of
we did
Rights.
see at the Smithsonian, they do have the flag that was flying when the national anthem, Star Spangled Banner, was written. They do have that flag, and it's huge. But we did see that, and it was a huge flag, but it was the real flag that was flying when the song was penned.
Flying at the fort, yes.
Right, and I have been to that fort on a separate trip to D.C. and outside of Baltimore, but a lot of the flag, it had holes in it, and the end was real tattered, and so everyone was walking in thinking that it was damaged in the war or whatever, but they'd given away pieces as souvenirs at
Really?
one time, and it had really been,
Yeah, they
but
boogered it up.
it was fascinating, and it was huge. It was.
Papa Jack, can I see this photo? We're going to show this photo, and then we're going to go to a break and play some of the Isaacs music. The Isaacs are a part of America's history that is the absolute best. We welcome everyone from every country. We do not have the segregation we once faced. We are an amazing conglomerate of a whole lot of good people who work together now. And I think nowhere could you, that is so beautiful. Who took that photo?
We don't know. We've
is
got some
gorgeous.
we think that are as good, but that was
It's
one
on the
that,
back, I
Okay.
think. Is there a website?
Yeah,
What's the guy's?
SeanKellyArt.com.
Sean Kelly took that
Yeah,
photo.
that is amazing. That is amazing.
You know, one of the most amazing things about this, every step you took, and I walked all the way around and through where you could, and some soldier in this group, each soldier, their eyes were always on you.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it was like they were real people,
Yeah,
huge, and
kind of an eerie
they're, yeah,
place.
and especially at night, you know, and everyone had a certain, they were on patrol, they had a certain territory to observe and be looking at. And
that
each
is
one
amazing.
had his own.
Sherry, I'll tell you this, when you go to Washington, there's two things you gotta have, lots of,
Handkerchiefs.
handkerchiefs and film for
Yeah.
your camera.
Yeah, yeah.
That's true.
And money, of course.
Well, right now, we are going to go to the Isaac's DVD, and we're going to do a couple of songs, give Papa Jack a break. Then we're going to come back, and we have more photos. How many did you bring, David? About 400 more?
There were quite a few. I don't know how many all total.
So
but-
we'll show some more photos, and we will encourage you. Plan a trip with your grandchildren, your family, maybe your father, who is also a survivor and went through any of these battles from Vietnam on out. There are amazing stories left to be told, and people like Papa Jack who lived it, and quite often you weren't crazy about talking about this.
I still am.
Yeah, still not. So it is quite often a memory that is put back on the back burner, but right now we want to honor everybody who ever served in America. We're going to go to the Isaacs, and remember, this is a Polish/Jewish family who came to America today, raising their family as Christians, the #1 group in bluegrass music today, the Isaacs. I'm just going to have this huge butcher block table on it that's mine. It actually seats about 20 if you wanted to use it in a country kitchen, or you could do like we did, use it for a work table.
Did you autograph it?
Now, we've been talking to a family today who knows a lot about work, and there's another lady here that I know a little bit about what she does, Sandra Kennedy. Happy birthday. I think she works over at Home Depot in Jasper
She's
from
my
her
age.
husband, BJ, with love. Happy birthday to Sandra, and to Miss Brenda Penley, 42 years old. Happy birthday. Must be the Ball Ground area, 735 number. Happy birthday. Remember, you can call in your birthdays, and we will say we hope to be here for Papa Jack's 90th. You are how old today? How old are you right now? You just had a birthday in December.
79.
79. Okay.
December, I'll be 80 years old.
On your 80th birthday, we need to have a big party, guys. Big party. Then on his 90th, we'll have a really big party. You said you want to take him back to Washington.
Yes.
Is there something that you feel like y'all missed?
Well, there he is. And but the problem with going back to Washington, sometimes you want to see what you saw before again. But we told him before we left, and I didn't know I was going back, but Wally and several of our family members are Georgia Southern alumni. And on September the 11th next year, Georgia Southern actually plays Navy. And, that's just right outside of Washington, D.C. So Wally informed us we're going back then, so we're going to have to make a trip out of it.
Now, won't that be a really tough time? Because on 9/11, don't they have a lot of visitors to D.C.?
They do.
I've been told that military bases on 9/11 is a very, very moving time to be there, and I think that day in Annapolis will probably be. I've never been to the Naval Academy, and I've always wanted to go, but I
That'll
think
be awesome.
that'll be the day to go. Football won't be very important that day, and I know anybody that knows me that hears me say that. I must have hit my head, but football won't be very important that day. But it'll be a good time to remember.
Did y'all ride one of the horse and buggies when y'all was in Washington?
Well, it was.
No, it was a rickshaw. It was a two-wheel bicycle, three-wheel bicycle.
Wow.
With a big guy.
Yeah, and the man saw me
pedaling.
walking, and he thought, well, I'll give him a ride, so I flag him over. Well, I said, how much is it? And he told me how much it was.
$10.
$10. Well, I said, okay. I said, Dad, you and Wally come on. And they came out of the dark. And there's a little bit of difference in their total weight and my weight. Well, the guy said it'll be $25.
I think after he had pedaled us 2 or 3 miles, I think I may have given him $30 or $40.
Little extra money, yeah.
But he was suffering. I said, can you pedal this thing with 600 pounds on it? He said, you guys don't weigh 600 pounds. And Dad said, we don't lack much.
That's funny.
And,
Well, right now we've got another birthday, and then it's almost time to say something we never say. Happy birthday to Robin West. And she said if she wins the cake, this is from her mom, Irene Dale. Happy birthday. She wants to donate to the community meal. Now, Papa Jack, you got to go to the community meal. You know your wife is a big part of that. Your family is a big part of this community and the communities that we serve. Thank you all for being here today. It has been an amazing journey to get to know you. If I could choose a father, I would have chosen you. I would have chosen you. And your wife, she just kind of brought me in and said, guys, you've got a sister. So y'all got stuck with me. You didn't have a choice.
And it's worked very well.
It's worked very well. Thank you for dinner Saturday night. We had a ball. Tomorrow is Inspirational Day here on North Georgia Now Today. Matt will be here, and we hope to inspire you. We hope to inspire you to know that it's your time. This is the best year of all our lives. Please take advantage of every single moment we have, every single moment. You do that, and you let that rub off on people you're around, and that's an awesome thing. That's an awesome statement. From North Georgia Now Today, I'm Sherry Martin.
And I'm Abraham Martin and John.
He is Abraham Martin and John. We will see you again only on ETC3. Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 10, 6 to 7:30, and what time? 1 to 2:30. Don't forget, Rich Scott's coming on in just a second.
Anybody here tomorrow?